the ram provided in a time long ago, there lived a man named Abraham. He was a man who journeyed far and wide, often to quiet places where the land stretched wide and the stars shone gently in the soft night sky. Abraham loved to listen to the whisper of the wind through the trees and to watch the calm flow of the rivers nearby. One day, Abraham received a very special message. It was a quiet direction spoken deep within his heart, asking him to take his beloved son Isaac to a mountain far away. This mountain was a sacred place, a spot where the earth met the sky in a gentle rise of stones and grass. Abraham and Isaac set out quietly together. The morning air was cool, and the path was calm under their feet. As they walked, Abraham carried wood on his shoulder, while Isaac carried a bundle of sticks. They spoke little, the silence between them soft and full of a natural peace. When they reached the mountain, Abraham carefully built an altar. Step by step he placed stones to make a safe, steady place for the fire. The wood was stacked gently, ready for a quiet flame. Isaac watched, his eyes calm but full of trust. Then, something tender and very still filled the air. Abraham was about to offer Isaac, his son, with a heavy heart and a steady calm. But just as the moment seemed the fullest of all, a soft sound came from the bushes nearby. It was delicate and surprising. Caught softly by its horns in a nearby thicket was a ram. The animal stood quietly, as if time itself had slowed. Abraham looked gently at the ram, and then back to Isaac, love and relief mixing quietly in his eyes. With tender hands, Abraham took the ram and prepared it for the offering. The sun dipped lower in the sky, turning the clouds a peaceful shade of pink and gold. The mountain air was fresh and still, carrying the sense of pine and earth. It is here on this mountain that Abraham named the place "the Lord will provide." He remembered the gentle moment when help came softly, almost as if it had been there all along, waiting for them. This story, told over many years and shared in soft voices by the firelight, reminds us of a calm trust that sometimes comes when least expected. It carries the quiet hope that even in the hush of uncertainty, some provision will find its way. And so the ram, caught by gentle horns, offered in place of Isaac, became a quiet symbol, a tender whisper through the ages of care, provision, and a love that watches over each step we take. Now as you imagine Abraham and Isaac walking down the mountain path, the shadows growing long, and a gentle breeze stirring the leaves, let peace settle softly over your thoughts. Let the story rest gently with you, like a calm evening wrapping the world in quiet light. Soft blues blending tenderly with hints of warm gold as the gentle sun began its slow climb. Abraham stood quietly near the altar, the ram now calm in his hands. He breathed in the fresh, crisp air, feeling the delicate coolness settle over his skin. Around him the silence was profound, only broken by the subtle rustling of leaves and the soft calls of distant birds. It was a moment suspended, a pocket of peace where the world seemed to hold its breath. The ram's eyes met Abraham's, reflecting a gentle understanding, almost serene in their quiet presence. This creature had become more than an animal in that moment. It was a sign, a quiet messenger. Abraham lowered his eyes slowly and whispered a soft word of thanks into the wind, a prayer that seemed to float like a delicate thread toward the heavens. Isaac watched quietly, his young face unfolding with the gentle realization that the path they had feared was shifting beneath their feet. He reached out to stroke the ram's soft fur, feeling the warmth of life thriving here, untouched and whole. The mountain around them held its own ancient secrets and deep stillness. Rocks worn by time, whispering winds weaving through the trees, the scent of wild herbs rising softly from the earth, all mingled in a sacred embrace. Abraham sensed that this place held a promise, one that reached far beyond what the eye could see or the heart could yet understand. As Abraham prepared the ram upon the altar, he moved with reverence, each gesture careful and filled with gratitude. The wood crackled softly beneath the ram's weight, and the small flame leapt eagerly, consuming the offering with steady warmth. The scent of aroma rose gently, a quiet incense carried on the breeze, mingling with the earth and sky. In these moments, Abraham felt a profound peace washing over him, a voice deep within whispering of endless provision, of paths made clear even when the way seemed shrouded in uncertainty. That voice carried the promise of life, love, and hope that nothing could diminish. Isaac's eyes shone with a light that was blossoming inside, trust growing, rooted deep by what they had witnessed. Together they stood side by side, two generations connected by a bond stronger than fear or sorrow. Here on this mountain, their journey had woven new threads of faith, threads that would bind and strengthen far beyond the reach of time. The sun rose higher, spilling golden light that softened the rugged landscape. Shadows withdrew quietly, and the world seemed to stretch and yawn in the warmth of daybreak. Abraham gathered the stones around the altar and placed them carefully, erecting a marker, a whispered symbol of this tender moment preserved forever. He named this resting place, "The Lord Will Provide," a gentle reminder etched into the land itself. With the altar behind them, father and son began to make their slow descent down the mountain. The path was steep, yet every step felt lighter than before. Each stone, each leaf beneath their feet echoed the presence of the ram's meaning, a presence of unexpected aid when all seemed lost. As they walked, the trees swayed softly, their leaves shimmering and dropping like fragile blessings. A gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of wildflowers, mingling with distant sounds of life, thriving gently in the valley below. Nature seemed to hum a quiet hymn, coaxing hope from the heart's depths. Along the way, Abraham shared soft stories with Isaac, not just of this day, but of kindness found even in trials, of beauty discovered in patience and trust. Isaac listened closely, the tender words weaving into his young soul, planting seeds of courage and quiet joy. Returning to their tent that evening, the stars above blinked gently, scattered pinpricks of light in the vast dark. The night was soft and still, cradling the earth like a lullaby. Abraham looked up, his heart full of unspoken thanks, a silent dialogue with the infinite wrapping him in warmth. That night, as Isaac lay resting, Abraham thought deeply on what had passed, the trembling fear that had gripped him, the startling gift that changed the tide, and the promise now etched in every breath they took. This story was far more than an event. It was a living truth, a gentle anchor for times when shadows gathered heavy and hearts questioned. Days turned to weeks, and life in their small camp moved quietly forward. The memory of the ram lingered, vibrant and tender, nestled like a soft ember blowing steady in the soul. Abraham and Isaac worked side by side, tending flocks and fields, finding simple joy in the peace that following this sacred moment had ignited. Others in the nearby villages heard whispers of the mountain, of the ram that appeared when hope seemed dim. Their eyes reflected the wonder of such a story, and their hearts felt a lightness spreading slowly, silently, like dawn brushing the earth. The tale passed from lips to ears, becoming a quiet testament to the unseen grace that reaches those willing to trust. Seasons changed, and with them, the land around the sacred place blossomed anew. Flowers bloomed where footprints had been pressed. The streams sang clearer songs, and the trees stood taller, as if lifted by the weight of blessing. Abraham often returned to the spot named "The Lord Will Provide," each visit a moment of renewal, a soft retreat for his spirit. In his reflection, Abraham found the strength to meet life's challenges with gentle courage. He knew that no matter the path, unforeseen help often arrived quietly, wrapped in kindness, and woven into the fabric of time like a tender song. Isaac grew, carrying with him the story as a precious gift. Through every step he took, through laughter, through doubt, through the gentle rise of day and the soft fall of night, he held the lesson close, that love and trust could open doors when all seemed closed, that the heart's deepest fears could be met with unexpected grace. And so the story continued, not just in the telling but in living, an echo of hope in the everyday moments of peace, in the soft kindness of a glance, in the whispered trust between one soul and the next. "The Lord Will Provide" became more than a name. It was a gentle promise carried across generations, a lasting heartbeat of compassion, written softly in the world's quiet places, waiting to be heard again and again. As the golden light of dusk settled over the land, Abraham and Isaac stood once more at the edge of the sacred mountain, two figures silhouetted against the fading sky. Calmness settled deep within their bones, a stillness woven from the threads of mercy and faith. And in the gentle twilight, the silent promise lingered, not as a loud call, but as a soft, unyielding whisper beneath the stars, a tender assurance that whatever the journey holds, provision is near, always quietly waiting to be found. As seasons passed, the mountain stood steadfast, silent witness to the ever-changing world. It held the quiet power of memory, its stones warmed by sunlight, its peaks caressed by clouds. The story of the ram, whispered softly among leaves and carried on gentle winds, grew in the hearts of those who came and went. Abraham continued to walk its slopes. Each step was measured, peaceful, a man shaped by trials, yet softened by grace. Isaac, now a boy growing tall and curious, followed closely. His eyes were bright with the fresh hunger of questions, but his heart was already rooted in the lessons carried through the years. There were mornings when the air was cool and still, when the sun spilled gold over distant hills, and all seemed perfect in quiet balance. On such days, Abraham would sit beside Isaac beneath ancient oaks, their gnarled branches standing testament to time. Together they spoke of trust, not as a simple hope, but as a living, breathing companion walking alongside every day. Isaac listened, absorbing the stories with the wide-eyed wonder of youth, but also the growing understanding that courage is not the absence of fear. It is a step taken despite it. The faith that provisions, like the ram of old, appear when paths seem closed. The people from the surrounding villages often came by. They told Abraham and Isaac how the tale of the ram filled their homes with quiet strength. Mothers sang it softly as lullabies, and elders shared it beside fires. When hard times came, when fields were dry or homes grew silent, the memory of that miraculous day stirred a gentle hope, reminding all that unseen hands tend to those who dare to trust. One afternoon, as the golden hues of afternoon softened into dusk, a small group approached the mountain's base. Among them was a young woman, her eyes shimmering with an honest light. She had heard the story as a child and walked the distance with a quiet determination to see the place where hope had once taken form. She moved thoughtfully, tracing her fingers along rough bark and smooth stones, her breath steady and calm. She spoke softly to Abraham and Isaac, her voice carrying a tenderness that seemed to weave into the very air. "Your story," she said, "it is like a river flowing through time, always present, always giving. It reminds us that no matter the shadows, the light returns." Isaac, now tall enough to see beyond the immediate, met her gaze. "Do you believe the ram is still here?" he asked. Abraham smiled, a slow, warm smile. "The ram is not just here," he replied. "It is within us in the quiet moments when fear subsides and trust grows. It comes when we open our hearts to love and patience and let go of what we cannot control." The woman nodded, her smile deepening. She sat beside them, the three forming a small circle in the fading light. Together they watched as stars began to pierce the deepening sky, their brilliance steady and sure. In those moments, nothing needed to be said. The story's meaning rested gently like a soft lullaby, a balm for weary souls. The mountain, the ram, the promise, they all breathed a shared life force, a pulse beneath the surface of all things. With night fully enveloping the world, they rose slowly, each carrying the piece of that sacred space within. The woman turned back toward her village, her step lighter, her spirit buoyed. Abraham and Isaac lingered a little while longer, hands clasped, eyes lifted toward the shimmer above. As the moon's pale light traced the contours of hills and trees, Isaac felt the quiet strength of the ram once more. Not as an animal bound by flesh and time, but as a living symbol woven into the fabric of his being. Years would come and go, and the story would continue to unfold in countless small acts of kindness, moments of faith, and the shared understanding that even in the deepest struggles, there exists a source of provision, waiting to be discovered. Abraham, now aged but unbowed, watched as his son walked a path illuminated by the lessons of the mountain. He knew that the legacy of hope and trust was steady and true, a gift passed from one soul to another, like a gentle flame carried carefully through the darkness. And so, beneath the wide expanse of stars, the mountain held its secrets quietly, cradling the promise that the Lord will always provide, in ways seen and unseen, whispered in the rustle of leaves, and felt in the steady beating of courageous hearts. The seasons continued their steady cycle upon the mountain. The breeze whispered through the oaks with the same gentle assurance as ever, carrying the sense of pine and earth. Abraham and Isaac remained nestled among the trees, their days marked by quiet routines and shared reflections. The story of the ram was no longer a single moment, but a living presence between them, the quiet melody beneath every breath. Isaac found himself drawn often to the place where the ram had first appeared. The ridge where Abraham had offered the sacrifice was now a place of soft grass and wildflowers, the stones warmed by sunlight and softened by years of rain. Here Isaac would sit, sometimes alone, sometimes with his father, and look out across the valleys. It was a place that held memory and meaning both, where the unseen threads of faith wove into the fabric of the land. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of gold and rose, Isaac spoke softly, his voice almost carried away by the wind. "Father, I realize now the ram was never just an animal caught in the thicket. It was something alive within us, courage rising in a moment of greatest need." Abraham smiled, his eyes crinkling like the leaves around them. "Yes, Isaac, courage is like the ram, present quietly, waiting for when it is called forth. It is woven through trust, and that trust grows each time we meet fear with steady breath and open heart." Their words floated between them with the ease of twilight. Fear had not vanished from their lives. It never did for those who chose to walk paths of unknowns. Yet, it no longer ruled them. Instead, they learned to sit with it gently, to lean into the silent strength that pulsed beneath. In the village below, the story of the ram continued its patient work. It passed from elder to child, from mother to daughter, from neighbor to neighbor. It shaped the hearts of the people, became a whispered mantra in moments of doubt. When the fields were parched, or when illness touched their homes, the ram's tail offered a fragile thread of hope, an assurance that even when what was wished for seemed beyond reach, provision would come. Perhaps not exactly as imagined, but always in ways that mended or sustained. The young woman who had climbed the mountain months before returned to the village with a new light in her eyes. She spoke often of the quiet power she found beneath the ancient oaks, of the peace that settled deep within her chest. Others came to her, drawn by the calm radiating from her words. She, too, became a bearer of the ram's promise, offering encouragement when shadows lengthened, reminding those around her that light still lived. One evening, Isaac walked the fields beyond the village, the sky stretching vast and clear above him. He listened to the hushed murmurs of the breeze, the distant call of night birds. Beneath the surface of his senses was a steady presence, the strength of the ram, not as a creature caught and offered, but as a flame glowing within. It was that unseen, unshakable trust that carried him in the quiet moments before dawn, in the laughter that swelled unexpectedly, in the stillness after grief. Part of the story Abraham shared with him had taken root deeply. The ram was a companion to the faithful, an emblem of the courage required not for the absence of fear but for its softening. It was the hand extended in kindness, the letting go of doubt, the anchoring of hope amidst uncertainty. As the years slipped past, Isaac grew into the steady-hearted man his father had hoped for. His gaze held a calm wisdom, and his steps carried the weightless confidence born from journeys traveled through both shadow and light. The villagers often sought him out when their hearts trembled with worry, knowing that his presence brought a kind of softness, a reminder that provision was not a matter of chance, but of grace. One afternoon, Abraham and Isaac stood once more beneath the oldest oak, its thick limbs curving toward the sky. The roots were knotted and strong, holding the earth firm as the seasons passed. Abraham's voice was lighter with age, touched by gratitude. "The ram," he said slowly, "is not just the symbol of provision. It is the keeper of trust lived in the real moments of life. It reminds us that love, even when unseen, is our lasting companion." Isaac nodded, feeling the truth like a warmth spreading through his chest. "And when fear arrives, we invite the ram closer, so it may quiet the trembling and carry us forward." They stood quietly then, the sky deepening behind them as stars began their slow dance. The mountain stretched wide and still, a patient witness to all things held and released. Night folded over the valley below, carrying soft scents of earth and pine, of promises whispered and remembered. The story of the ram, a tale once of sacrifice and provision, had become instead a song of inner trust and courage. It lived in every gentle act of faith, in every hand extended, in every heart brave enough to wait and hope. Abraham and Isaac turned toward home, their steps measured and sure. The mountain watched silently, a guardian of all that had been given and all that was still to come. And somewhere just beyond sight, the ram moved like a shadow and a light, an eternal presence resting beneath the oaks, where fear softened and love took hold. Each morning the village awoke with a quiet sense of hope. The story of the ram whispered softly like the wind through the olive branches. Even in the smallest details, the children's laughter, the careful tending of the fields, the rhythm of daily chores, there floated a tender reminder of the courage wrapped in trust. It wasn't bold or loud, but steady and gentle, like the turning of time itself. Isaac moved among the villagers with a calm presence. There was a softness to his gaze, a subtle strength that did not demand attention but invited closeness. When worries crept in, he spoke in low tones, his words weaving threads of reassurance. His courage was inherited not just through story, but lived in each gentle act. A child who stumbled at stone's edge would feel his steady hand. A farmer burdened with drought would meet his quiet smile. Isaac carried the ram's promise without fanfare, allowing it to blossom in the ordinary moments. Days folded into seasons, the mountain stood always on the horizon, immutably patient. It was a silent guardian, a reminder of the journey that shaped the village's heart. The breezes that rolled down its slopes carried the scent of pine and wild thyme. Breath caught on those winds carried the essence of trust, as if the very air held the ram's spirit. The young woman who had once climbed its heights often returned to sit at the village well. Her eyes held a depth that mirrored the slow rivers, and when she spoke, her voice was like a quiet stream, steady, sure, flowing with an inner calm. She shared the peace she had gathered, not as teachings, but as stories woven with laughter, tears, and the soft acceptance of all that life unfolds. Elders gathered beneath the old oak tree to watch the sun drift toward evening. Their faces, lined with years, glowed in the amber light. With every rustle of the leaves, they felt the ancient story stir anew. They spoke less and listened more, recognizing that the tale of the ram was not a finish line, but a living song, always becoming, always breathing. In this shared silence, love revealed itself as more than sentiment or word. It was a quiet companion, a deep invisible thread that held all things together. It was present in the soft gaze of a mother, the steady pull of a returned wave, the gentle touch of a hand passed through time. This love was patient and enduring, not a flame flickering wildly, but a pulse steady as the earth's own heart. Abraham and Isaac found themselves often beneath the oak. Their conversation stretched across the calm space like a woven tapestry. Abraham would trace a finger along the bark's roughness, saying nothing, while Isaac breathed the cool air deeply. Occasionally words would drop softly between them, not heavy or urgent, but like seeds planted in the soil of shared understanding. They knew the ram was no longer just an animal, but a keeper of trust, a symbol carved into the village's collective soul. One afternoon, as the sun softened toward dusk, Abraham said quietly, "The ram taught us that courage is not absence of fear. It is the faith that something holds us, even when the path is steep." Isaac nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon where mountain and sky met in a gentle embrace. "And that love does not disappear when the night grows dark," he replied. "It is there, steady, like a stone beneath our feet." The village began to collect the story of the ram not just in words but in song. Around evening fires, voices would rise and fall, the melody slow and soothing. The song was a gentle wave, carrying wisdom of trust, courage, and love. It was sung not to banish fear but to welcome it, soften it, and move alongside it. With every note, the villagers found their breath deepen, their hearts opened just a little wider. The song became a lullaby for the weary, a quiet anthem for those standing on the edge of uncertainty. It was a reminder that the ram's spirit rested within all who dared to move forward, not despite their fears but with them. The mountain, too, seemed to lean closer in the twilight, its silhouette a protective cloak. Some said its shadows held the ram's silent promise, that those who honor the steady heart will never walk alone. Its rocks, worn smooth by time, whispered a truth that was old as the earth and as new as the dawn each day. Abraham and Isaac, now shaped by years both gentle and profound, walked through the village with a grace that came from knowing fear and trust could live side by side. Their footsteps were measured, sure, the pace of a journey not toward an end, but toward a deeper belonging. At times, new travelers arrived, drawn by the stories carried on the wind. They found here not answers carved in stone, but a quiet space to listen, to themselves, to the mountain, and to the steady beat of a story that embraced both shadow and light. The ram provided more than rescue or reprieve. It wove an eternal thread that connected heart to heart, breath to breath, presence to presence. It invited all to lean into the soft courage born where force surrenders to trust, where love grows steady and deep. And so the village lived on, rooted in the story lifted by the song, the mountain watching always, silent and sure. The ram's promise sang softly through the ages, a timeless companion for every step, every breath, every unfolding moment. Where fear once tightened its grip, a calm steadiness now blossomed. Where doubt once whispered loud, this was the gift born on the mountain wind. The ram provided, and so did the story, and so did the hearts brave enough to hold it. In this piece, the village found its own reflection, a living song of courage and trust, an ever-present invitation to breathe deeply, live gently, and walk forward with an open heart. Even as the seasons came and went, the quiet ritual beneath the oak tree remained a sacred hour for Abraham and Isaac. The rustling leaves whispered in the afternoon breeze, a steady murmur like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Each meeting was less about words than about presence, an exchange of silence that held more than speech ever could. One afternoon, as sunlight painted dappled patterns on the grass, Isaac traced circles in the dirt with a small stick. "Father," he said softly, "fear is still part of me. How do I live with something so vast inside, without being swallowed?" Abraham looked to the horizon, where the mountain's profile stood solemn and steady. "Fear, my son, is like the sky at dusk, sometimes clear, sometimes clouded. It shifts, but it never leaves entirely. What changes is how we move beneath it." Isaac's eyes followed a flock of birds winging their way home. "We sing of the ram. We say the story makes us brave, but I wonder if courage isn't about silence too, a quiet knowing, even in the heart's deepest shadows." "The ram taught us this," Abraham replied, "not because it had no fear, but because its heart trusted something greater. Courage is the choice to walk forward, hand in hand with doubt, not in spite of it." The village had grown gentler in those years. A softening had settled over the people, as if the song carried on their lips drew a kind of collective breath that eased old burdens. The firelight that lit their evenings now flickered upon faces open to the gift of vulnerability, the willingness to acknowledge trembling hearts. New visitors came, drawn by tales of the place where fear was welcomed, where the ram's spirit wove a spell of peace. They found themselves unburdened in ways they hadn't known were possible. One traveler, a woman with weary eyes and heavy steps, approached the oak one evening. She sat quietly beside Abraham and Isaac, her gaze drawn to the mountain. "I have walked far," she said, voice brittle, yet sincere. "I carry grief that has silenced my soul. How do I find courage when my heart feels broken beyond repair?" Isaac offered a shard of the song, softly lifting its notes into the dusk. "Fear is a friend we meet, not a foe to chase away." The woman's shoulders loosened for a moment, as if the words had made space inside her chest. Abraham took the ram's story from the beginning, recounting the timeless thread of trust woven through each generation, a tapestry of light and shadow. "We don't carry our burdens alone," Abraham said. "The mountain stands not as a distant sentinel, but as a companion in every step. When you feel broken, it is the steady breath of the earth that holds you steady." Courage begins with recognizing that sometimes we only need to breathe. The woman nodded slowly, a tentative smile lifting the edges of her lips. "Then I will try. I will meet my fear, not as an enemy, but as an old friend with much to teach." In the days that followed, the visitors shared stories of their own fears and hopes, weaving new voices into the song beneath the oak. The gathering became a sanctuary, where the line between stranger and friend softened until it almost disappeared. Isaac noticed how the village's spirit had shifted again, not toward conquering fear, but toward a gentler dance with it. "Perhaps what we have learned," he said once, "is that love itself is the art of holding space, for ourselves, for each other, for all that feels too fragile to endure alone." Abraham nodded, his gaze resting on the ram's distant silhouette, almost invisible on the mountain's craggy face. Love is not the absence of fear, but the courage to be present within it. Like our ram who provided more than sacrifice, provided a way to hold faith, even when the path was unclear. Night deepened, and stars began to twinkle like whispers caught in the vast dark. Beneath the ancient oak, voices rose and fell, a soft hymn inviting openness over resistance, gentleness over judgment. A child's laughter rippled through the circle, breaking the stillness like a fresh breeze. It was a reminder that fear and love coexist not apart, but intertwined, woven like the branches overhead, sturdy yet supple, sheltering all who seek refuge. Years later, those who had gathered by the oak could still recall the ram's promise, never alone, never forgotten. It was a living breath between generations, an offering of peace wrapped in the quiet courage to walk forward without certainty, trusting the steady hand of time and grace. And so the village continued, a delicate bloom thriving in mountain air, sustained by a story older than memory, by a song older than words. The ram's spirit lived on, not as a distant legend, but as a tender pulse within every heart willing to meet fear with open arms. As twilight softened into night, Abraham and Isaac rose and stood beneath the canopy, feeling the cool earth beneath their feet. They breathed deeply, the rhythm of the mountain echoing within them, a calm current carrying them gently onward. In the silence, they understood. The journey was never about arriving, but about moving with kindness, step by measured step, down paths woven of trust, courage, and enduring love. And with that knowing, they turned toward the village, toward the lighted homes, toward the voices rising in song, ready to live gently, breathe deeply, and continue forward, together, always together. The days unfurled with a tender rhythm, each sunrise brushing the village with soft gold. Beneath the oak, the gathering continued growing, a quiet mosaic of voices and hearts, sharing their truths. Some spoke of shadows that clung to their thoughts like early morning mist, the small fears that whispered behind smiles. Others spoke of storms weathered, of sorrow's weight lifted only by the gentleness of remembering they were never truly alone. Among them sat the weary woman, her eyes clearer now than when she first arrived. She had learned a new way of listening, to the whisper of fear within, to the steady pulse of love beneath it. Her heart, once a fragile vessel cracked by loss, was knitting itself together with threads of kindness and hope, woven in the grace of this shared space. Abraham and Isaac observed quietly, their presence a steady current beneath the ebb and flow of stories. Abraham, with his sturdy hands resting on knees weathered by time, still carried the calm certainty of the earth beneath the ram's hooves. Isaac, soft-spoken and attentive, held the air between them alive with songs that cradled the fragile spaces inside each soul. There was no haste among them, only the gentle unfolding of understanding. Fear was not a mountain to be scaled in a single breath, but a landscape to be traced slowly with kindness. In this village, the sharp edges of dread softened by acceptance, by the intimate tether of community bridging one heart to another. One evening, as twilight folded into night, the villagers gathered again beneath the ancient oak. Lanterns swung gently from low branches, casting pools of warm light. Children's laughter wound like silver thread through the dark, their joy an emblem of the trust that had taken root. The weary woman now led a quiet song, her voice steady, calling forth words that acknowledged pain as well as promise. "We carry the weight of fear," they sang, "and the light it shows us in the distance. We are the ram's whisper on the wind, never alone, always held." As the song wove through the cool night air, Abraham began to speak again, his voice soft but clear. The ram did more than save that day. It taught us a way to walk through life. It showed us how to bear burdens, not by hiding them deep, but by offering them gently into the hands of those who stand with us. In faith, trust grows like roots beneath the ground, unseen yet vital. Isaac nodded, adding, "And love, like the ram's sacrifice, asks us only for presence, being with each other in the fragile moments, in the tremors of fear. Presence that does not demand bravery, but welcomes vulnerability." The village seemed to breathe in unison with these words, their meaning settling like soft dew. The weary woman watched the faces around her, some marked with experience, others bright with newfound hope, and felt a quiet stir of gratitude. In the weeks that followed, the village flourished in its gentle way. The oak stood witness, its branches whispering stories of courage, born not from conquest, but from quiet endurance. New seeds of trust sprouted with each shared fear laid bare, and laughter continued to wind through the streets like a tender promise. Abraham and Isaac remained guardians of this sacred trust, not priests or warriors, but humble keepers of the ram's legacy. They encouraged the villagers to honor their own fears as guides, to sit with discomfort as one would with a fragile bird, hands cupped carefully, breathing slow and steady. As sunlight spilled through olive leaves, Abraham and Isaac walked together beneath the oak's spreading canopy. Abraham's hand brushed a low-hanging branch, and he mused, "This journey isn't about erasing fear. It's about learning to carry it as a companion." Isaac smiled softly, to greet it as an old friend who brings stories and teaches us to love with open arms. Their voices were a quiet harmony with the whispering wind. As seasons changed, the village became a sanctuary for those seeking refuge from their inner storms. Word spread quietly, a place where fear was honored as part of the human song, where courage was the gentle act of facing shadows with open hearts. Travelers arrived, bearing their own wounds and stories, finding solace in the village's gentle embrace. Each one left a little lighter, carrying the ram's promise that no burden borne alone remains unbearably heavy. In time, the oak became a living testament to the power of shared vulnerability. Its roots spread wide and deep, much like the trust that blossomed beneath it. Its branches caught countless whispered prayers and songs of quiet courage. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in soft lilac hues, Abraham and Isaac stood once more before the gathering beneath the oak. The village was quiet now, a lull of peace settling over the land like a soft quilt. Abraham spoke with reverence. "We carry the ram's story with us, not as a token of past sacrifice, but as a living path." His eyes met those of the weary woman, now radiant with a calm strength, a path of kindness, trust, and enduring love. Isaac lifted his gaze to the ancient branches above, and in that love we find the courage to be present, not despite our fears, but alongside them, to live gently and to walk united, step by step, heart to heart. The villagers closed their eyes, feeling the truth of these words like a warm breath against their skin. The oak, silent and strong, seemed to pulse with the very heartbeat of the place, a sanctuary where fear and love intertwined as threads in the same tapestry. As night deepened, the lanterns flickered softly, children's laughter echoed faintly in dreams, and the village rested in the quiet knowing the ram had provided more than a sacrifice. It had given a way to live with tenderness, courage, and unshakable hope. And so, the story continued, an unending song beneath the oak's watchful boughs, of love's quiet courage and the gentle strength found in holding space for one another, always. Seasons moved softly over the village, unfolding their rhythms like whispered secrets. Morning settled in with a gentle hush, as dew gathered quietly on the blades of grass, each droplet a tiny mirror reflecting the sky's calm blue. Night came wrapped in the silence of stars, a canopy that invited the villagers to dream gently, cradled by the legacy of the ram. Abraham and Isaac would often sit beneath the oak, its branches stretched wide, as if beckoning the stories of the day to gather there, to rest and be shared. The tree's leaves would rustle softly with the passing breeze, a natural lullaby that seemed to carry the unspoken words of each villager, a breath held and released, a quiet fear met with steady kindness. One afternoon, a traveler arrived, a woman whose eyes held the shadows of many paths walked alone. She moved slowly, carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. The villagers watched with a gentle curiosity, knowing that this quiet place, grounded by the ram's legacy, was a harbor for those seeking more than just shelter, those seeking a sanctuary for the soul. Abraham welcomed her with a soft nod, his presence as steady as the earth beneath their feet. Isaac offered her a seat beneath the tree, where the sunlight filtered through leaves, tracing patterns on the ground like delicate lace. The traveler exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her shoulders lowering as if the air itself were lighter here. She told them of the burden she carried, not of the body, but of a heart clogged with restless worries, of nights filled with shadows that whispered doubts unkind, and days burdened by the weight of expectations unmet. She spoke in a voice that was a blend of strength and fragility, a melody tuned by experience yet hungering for peace. Abraham listened without interruption, feeling the familiar ache of those silent struggles. Isaac, ever attuned to the language of feeling, reached for her hand, a small gesture that trembled with unspoken comfort. They did not offer grand solutions or swift fixes. Instead, they offered the simple gift of presence, a testament to the ram's enduring lesson that love breathes kindness without judgment, and that courage grows quietly alongside vulnerability. In the days that followed, the traveler began to join the rhythm of village life. not by erasing her fears, but by sitting with them, letting them ebb and flow like tides. She walked among the fields, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin, and sometimes paused beneath the oak, its rooted strength mirroring a quiet hope awakening inside her. The community continued to flourish gently, their shared trust a steady flame in the soft twilight. Neighbors offered smiles and kind words, small acts that knit their hearts closer. Children played freely, their laughter mingling with the rustling leaves, a song of innocence protected by as much love as the oldest, wisest hands in the village. Abraham and Isaac watched with quiet pride, not of possession but of gratitude. The legacy they guarded was less an inheritance than a living presence, a breath of kindness that passed between each person, a gentle thread woven into the fabric of daily life. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of amber and rose, the elder and the younger sat once again beneath the oak. Isaac's gaze rested on the horizon, the fading light tracing his face in soft relief. "The ram's story," Isaac said softly, "teaches us that fear is never the end. It is a path we walk alongside love, not away from it. To carry fear openly is to show our truest strength." Abraham nodded, his eyes reflecting the dimming light. We do not conquer fear by denying it, but by welcoming it into the gentle embrace of trust. And in that embrace we find the courage to be ourselves. As night embraced the village, a cool breeze whispered through the branches overhead, carrying the scent of earth and rain to come. The villagers gathered close, their hearts tuned to the quiet song that had begun with a single sacrifice, a willingness to carry burdens, to hold fear gently, and to love unconditionally. A soft murmur rose among them, not of words, but of shared breath, of spirits aligned beneath the vast sky. The oak tree stood sentinel, its roots deep and unyielding, a symbol of the trust and kindness that flowed freely here. The traveler found her place among the villagers, not as one who had arrived, but as one who belonged. She had learned the delicate art of quiet courage, not by absence of fear, but by acceptance of it, carried softly within the fold of a community made strong by vulnerability. As dawn approached, painting the village in soft pastels, Abraham and Isaac rose together. Their steps were calm, their hearts steady. The ram's legacy was not finished, it was a continuing story, one written not with grand gestures, but with countless moments of tenderness, trust, and unwavering kindness. The village, resting peacefully beneath the oak's protective boughs, breathed in the promise of each new day. And somewhere in the gentle silence, a faint melody lingered. The ongoing song of the ram, of quiet courage lived beneath the open sky, where love and fear walk hand in hand, endlessly entwined. Seasons moved gently through the village, each day folding seamlessly into the next like a soft unfolding of a shared story. The oak tree stood tall amid it all, leaves rustling like whispers of the past, reminders of the ram's gift and the quiet courage it inspired. The traveler, now woven into the life of the village, grew in her own way. There was no sudden transformation, no dramatic unraveling of fear. Instead, there was a steady unfolding of acceptance. Fear hadn't vanished, it settled beside her, a shadow that she no longer tried to outrun, but learned to greet as a companion. Some mornings she would walk beneath the great branches of the oak, feeling the bark's roughness under her palm. The touch grounded her, tethered her to the village and the stories it held. In those moments she breathed in the strength of the people who had welcomed her, the invisible threads of kindness that ran from heart to heart. Abraham and Isaac watched her quietly from a distance, their presence a comforting hum in the background of her life. They never pressed, never asked for more than openness. It was a gentle witnessing, the kind that allows a person to grow in their own time, in their own way. The village itself began to hum with subtle changes. Neighbors spoke more often, lingering just a little longer at doorways, in markets, or on familiar paths. The traveler noticed how smiles came easier, how hands reached out spontaneously to steady another or to offer a small, unexpected gift. It was as if kindness had become the village's unspoken language. As the sun softened and dipped low in the sky, the traveler found herself beside Isaac near the oak tree. The two sat quietly, watching a pair of children chase after a swirling leaf caught in the wind. "It feels different now," she said, her voice soft. There's a kind of peace here I didn't know I could have. Isaac nodded slowly. Peace doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means we carry it differently with others beside us. The ram showed us that love grows when courage stands with vulnerability. She looked at him, surprise and understanding mingling in her chest. So it's not about being fearless? Not at all. Fear is part of love's shadow. To love deeply is to face that shadow and still choose kindness. The traveler thought of the many times she had tried to hide her fears, to make herself smaller so they wouldn't be seen. Now she felt the opposite, a quiet courage to let them live openly, knowing they were met with understanding. In the weeks that followed, the village came together in small, tender ways. Meals were shared without formality. Stories were told, not to impress, but to connect. Evenings would find people sitting beneath the oak, a few in one spot, others scattered here and there, all drawn by an unspoken thread that bound them to each other. Abraham, with his serene patience, would sometimes speak of the ram's sacrifice, not as something past, but as something alive in each choice to be kind. Isaac would add that the courage to be vulnerable was the truest bravery there was. Their words weren't meant to teach or preach, but to remind, gently, quietly, that every act of tenderness was a living echo of the ram's presence. One evening, as dusk settled softly over the rooftops, and lamps flickered on one by one, the travelers stood beneath the oak with Abraham and Isaac. The air was calm, carrying the subtle scent of earth and fallen leaves. "I think I understand now," she said. The ram was never just about sacrifice. It was about the quiet strength and love, the courage and kindness, the way all of those pieces live within us when we choose to share them. Abraham smiled, a warmth folding into his eyes. Yes, the ram provided more than a way forward. It provided a way to be. Isaac reached out, lightly touching the traveler's hand, an unspoken link of support and shared understanding. The village was quiet beneath the stars. The oak stood watch, its branches a gentle embrace over all who had come to rest beneath it. And in that stillness, kindness did not fade, it settled deeper still, a steady light woven through the fabric of the village, a legacy carried softly in each heart. The traveler looked around at the faces silhouetted against the gentle glow, felt the steady beat of many hearts joined in simple trust, and believed fully there was a home here, not just in place but in spirit. Fear and love, kindness and courage, all one and the same, carrying the story forward, endless as the sky above. The ram provided, still, for those who see with open hearts, and life, even with its shadows, blossomed quietly in that truth. The evening descended softly over the village, wrapping the trees and homes in a tender dim light. The air carried the scent of earth and herbs, mingled with the quiet murmur of voices and the gentle rustle of leaves. Beneath the great oak tree, the travelers sat once more, feeling the steady pulse of life around and within them. Abraham's voice came, low and steady, weaving through the moments like a gentle thread. The ram given that day, he said, was more than a trial overcome. It was a story that taught us about the sacred dance between fear and faith, between hesitation and trust. Each time we remember, we return to that place of courage, where the unknown meets the heart's resolve. Isaac nodded, his eyes reflecting the flicker of firelight. Yes, and it reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to be present with it, to hold it not as a burden but as a companion through life's journeys. This companionship invites kindness to grow, both for ourselves and for others. The traveler breathed deeply, feeling the weight and softness of those words settle within. It was as if the old tale, once remote and distant, had become a living pulse inside their own story. Not a grand event carved in stone, but a quiet presence sustained in daily acts of gentleness and bravery. The village, seemingly aware of this gentle pulse, leaned into it. Neighbors shared lantern light at their doorways, whispered blessings to each other on wandering paths. Children's laughter found more time in the fading light, and even the animals seemed to carry a calmer step. The traveler noticed how kindness was not only a feeling but a kind of moving, how hands reached out without being asked, how eyes met without demand or expectation. It was as though the story of the ram had painted the village in subtle shades of tenderness, visible only to those who paused long enough to see. Abraham smiled slowly. This is the living legacy of that day, a ripple that never ceases. When one heart offers kindness amid fear, it encourages another to do so, and the world, ever so slightly, bends toward invitation rather than isolation. Isaac's tone softened. We learned then that the ram was not only about sacrifice, but about provision, the provision of new paths where fear once stood as a wall. It is in these pathways we find the courage to be vulnerable, to be seen, and to see others with openness. The traveler looked around the circle beneath the tree. There were faces marked by trials and joys, lines etched by laughter and worry alike. Each face held a story of their own, walking into fear and stepping into love. And here, in the glow of the fire, those stories blended into a shared tapestry. A quiet question arose inside the traveler's heart. How could they carry this forward? How might they honor the ram's ongoing call out beyond this village and the comfort of its circle? The answer came softly, in a whisper almost unheard at first. By continuing to show up, by living kindness in small moments, by embracing discomfort not as something to be avoided, but as an invitation to grow closer to others. The traveler thought of the people they had met along the way, the fleeting smiles, the tears shared over simple bread, the hands held in silence. It was these acts, seemingly modest, that formed the true ritual of courage. Not heroic feats, but small persistent acts of love. Outside, the senses sharpened. The cool air carried the distant call of a night bird, and the stars blinked through breaks in the leaves. The fire crackled, shifting light and shadow as though the ram's story itself was breathing with the night. The traveler closed their eyes, feeling a wave of gratitude swell quietly, grateful for the village, for Abraham and Isaac, for the unexpected gift of fear met with love. The journey was not about conquering, but about embracing, not about erasing fear, but weaving it into the fabric of hope. When the eyes opened again, the village looked peaceful, expectant. The traveler felt steadied by the knowledge that this was more than a resting place. It was a home for the heart's many contradictions, strength found in tenderness, courage born through vulnerability. The ram, that silent, steadfast presence, had become a compass, a reminder that to live fully meant to carry the weight of uncertainty with humility, to listen deeply, and to extend kindness even when the way seemed unclear. As the fire's embers glowed faintly, the traveler rose, their steps light but determined. There was still a path ahead, roads winding beyond the horizon, but now those steps carried peace, not the absence of fear, but the presence of a courage larger than themselves. In this moment, beneath the ancient oak and the vast sky, the traveler carried the ram's offering forward, a gift of love wrapped in vulnerability, a call to nurture kindness as an everyday act of bravery. And with a final, quiet breath of night air, the traveler began to walk again, held, honored, and guided by the enduring light of the ram provided.